Thank you very much for the very nice introduction. And I would like to share our presentation with you. So just let me know if there is a problem. I hope not. I guess you should now see that.
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
Perfect. So first of all, I would like to thank you for this wonderful opportunity to present in this thoughtful and inspiring conference. My name is Marketa and this is David, and we are based in the Faculty of Education, Masaryk University in the Czech Republic in Brno, which is the second largest city here in the Czech Republic.
Link do chatu. We would love to start with a little warm-up, and we hope that you guys all enjoy your lunch or maybe a coffee. And you will now receive in the chat a link. Hopefully it will happen soon. Here we go. You should be able to see now a link in your chat. If you would like, if you would please could click on it, and it should get you to the application called Menti. In case you are using your phone, there is also a barcode displayed on the screen and a number that you can use for it. And I will now love to give you like a minute or two, and there is a question about how you consider education.
And it's important for us because we are going to share with you our research, and we were asking experts about education. So as you all are experts here, we would like to invite you also to contribute to this question. What is the really important for current education? It could be really anything. Okay, so we will.
Yeah, sorry. So if nobody answer, I share my opinion or my experience in teacher education, especially in teacher education, because I am teaching in teacher education, and it's connecting so much with your presentation, because I think that in the University of Debrecen, in the teacher education, the University of Debrecen is much less we can find much less emphasize. It's much less emphasized on the students with special needs. We have also just one compulsory course for them, which is the pedagogy of students for special needs, which includes a lot of topics of course, from what is the inclusive education to the problems with students who has psychological disorders, and the blind students and the Roma students. So it's all in one course in one semester. So it's very, very less information for them. And the second, but I see in my courses that students are open and they would find questions how they have to teach students with special needs, especially in the case of Roma students or pupils.
Thank you, Clara, for your answer. We also can now clearly see your answer, those who are actually answering in the application, the Menti.
And the words that are most mentioned here was the word like flexibility, cooperation, inclusion, inclusivity, diverse methodology, better livelihood. Wow, it's still changing, and there are more and more. And also the well-trained teachers. We think this is also very important for the education in the future. And someone also mentioned digitalized Yes, the technology, digitalization, and all connected with this is also going to be part of our presentation and very important part of the research that we conclude. Thank you so much for all your or your participation in the Mentimeter, and we will now start with the or move forward with the presentation.
So we will start with the introduction of teacher practice here at Faculty of Education. Then we will share with you our motivation for a research project, and then we will describe the findings, and hopefully we will have the time for the discussion. So here at the Faculty of Education, we do have a program, or is a part of the curriculum for all student teachers who are required to do practice tutoring in social disadvantaged families. Students serve as tutors in local minor and ethnic communities and socially disadvantaged families. They work with migrants, transnational families, and it's a part of their pedagogical practice. They also have the reflection of their practice here at the faculty, so they can reflect on their experience with diversity, cultural biases, presumptions of others, prejudice, because in the beginning, when they are applying for this practice, they are quite afraid to work with social disadvantaged families, and it's maybe because of they have no experience with these families and kids, because as we will share lately, these families are very often not present in the public sphere, like in media, in newspaper. They are somehow invisible, like we have in the morning presentation. And students are asked to work 60 hours, well, it's 30 hours with per semester with the families, and 30 hours it's for preparation.
And we have decided to conclude the research, and our main research motivation was that there is going to be or there is a newly emerging program at the Faculty of Education which should be able to better meet the trends and needs of education for the future, as you mentioned in the Mentimeter. And we would love to create the program here at the Faculty of Education where the topics as inclusion or diversity won't be something like that's add on or something that's extra, but we would love to make it very deeply rooted as a part of the program, as a basis for the program. Because we believe that the Faculty of Education must reflect on trends in education and respond to changing and accelerating world that is full of technology and diversity and mobility. And as we mentioned here, what Beck said, and you also mentioned in Mentimeter, the methodological approach is very, very important, because we are still somehow or might be stuck in our methodological nationalism or perspective, and we sometimes just won't be able to understand new trends and global changes that are happening in, especially in the contemporary education. The theoretical framework for our research is based on the philosophical and sociological concept. We are working with Baumann's concept of the solid and liquid modernity. It was used in our research when basically the concept of the solid modernity is based on the social world that is habituated, ordered, characterized by resistance to change. And the liquid modernity concept is when the simple presence of structure we were aware of is no more a guarantee of its functionality, and the uncertainty becomes the only certainty. Because the education system and the world that we are talking about is changing very fast, it's accelerating, and diversity is becoming more and more present in the classroom. So we are looking for education system where the diversity is a source of enrichment and nothing that we should be afraid of because it's a different or because it's new to us.
In our research, we divided into two parts, and the first part was focusing on students, on the experience of students who have the experience from social disadvantaged families, and we actually use more than 1,000 self-questionnaire, which was the self-reflection, written self-reflection of students about their practice, and we also conducted 20 qualitative interviews and also 10 focus groups with students.
That was the first part of our research when we are gaining data directly from the students that have the experience with teaching practice from the social disadvantage of family background. And the second part of our research was based on getting perspective from the experts that are somehow set in the education. So we approached 12 experts with the educational background, focusing on diversity and inclusive education, and we did an interview with them that actually help us at the very end better understand how the new program here at the Faculty of Education that we mentioned at the very beginning should look like, the program that should better reflect the trends in the education and diversity and inclusion.
For our qualitative research, we use situation analysis, which is a kind of the new way of grounded theory approach, and that takes into account the postmodern turn. There are 3 levels of the research: macro, meso, and micro level, and we were focusing of these levels in the research. The research question in part 1, which was with the students, was how students perceive social inequalities within their teaching practice.
And the other part of the research that we conducted with the expert was what kind of elements selected experts identified as important for inclusive education. In this context, the element is like a very basic unit for the situation analysis. So once you identify the elements, you can think of the whole situation that you are examining. In our case, it was the situation about the inclusive education.
So in the first part, you can read the reflective writing of our students. They were really appreciating this experience because it was totally new experience for them. Because, as I mentioned, to work with social disadvantaged families is something which is not common for them, but it's also important for future teachers to be sensitive for the family environment the kids are actually living in. So the students were really reflecting also their prejudice about to entrance or approaches these families. And also they were mentioning that it helped them to broaden their expertise maybe in diversity and in different cultures, and they were trying a different food during the tutoring, and these essential everyday experience are really important for them. They have students in the beginning, before the practice, they have also a lot of misconception about social inequalities, because as we will share later, the social media create stereotypes, and then in the beginning they are scared to work with these families because they have a lot of prejudice and they have no experience with them. So it's really hard, and we need to help them in the beginning to overcome these prejudice, and they also reflect that it's really important for their teaching practice, because as you can see in the picture, you probably know this picture very well. Sometimes students think that if they are good teacher, everyone has a chance to be successful. But when they have this practice and they actually encounter the families and they can see the environment, and they realize that this ideal concept that everyone can be successful is quite complicated, and it's not just the matter of abilities, of the knowledge. There is a lot of elements in it. So they definitely have a new perspective of their own teaching methods after this.
So that was the first part of the research that we conducted with the students. And as we said, we are now working on the new program for the students at the Faculty of Education, when we would like to have this topics like a diversity and inclusion that is deeply rooted in the program itself, not something that is extra. Therefore, we decided to look at the topic of diversity and inclusion as like a whole part, not just for a part of whole, not just like a specific piece of it. And when we were talking with the experts, what are the important elements for the future education, considering diversity and inclusion, we are focusing on different levels that are based on the situational analysis approach that we mentioned at the very beginning. So we try to understand the paradigm, the culture, what is the role of the university, and the implication for students when we are talking about the changes in curriculum concerning inclusion and diversity.
On the level of paradigm, we identified 3 discourses which has an impact to the current and social education reality.
It was a discourse of decolonialism, discourse of critical internationalization, and epistemological populism. If we just briefly mention the discourse of decolonialization, it's about that, like within this discourse, experts point out that, or we try to focus on where the knowledge is actually being produced, and we are going back to the topic of technology, and as Marketa mentioned at the very beginning, social media or media itself, because we understand that there are the new forms of social inequalities in this ever-changing, accelerating world. When one of our experts says that even Google is not biased. You know, when you, for instance, try to Google just the women, there's it's some. I mean, in most of the cases, it's connected with the cleaning process, you know, or with the sexism, and it's same with the Roma or with the Muslim. You know, when you try to Google Muslim or Roma community, you can very often find the pictures that they live in the very bad condition, or you know, with the environment that is destroyed, and that's how they're actually displayed symbolically in the public space. Just an example how important.
Left. 2 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah, 2 minutes left. Sorry.
Just the example, if we are talking about the sources of knowledge, those are the MOOC courses that were very popular, especially during the pandemics. And now the same picture, the blue ones are actually the same courses that came from that are based from the Western education. It's a most of them. You know, those are the 18 most used MOOC courses in 2020, and that's what we want to mention. The sources of knowledge and the perspective, a cultural diversity perspective, is very, very important if we are talking about diversity and inclusion.
And I would also add something to the identified discourse of critical internationalization. Like internationalization is part of our everyday life in at universities. We can see it clearly now during this presentation and conference, but also it's specified for the specific group. For example, in the Czech Republic, there are no Roma students at higher education, but this international experience is really important and it's required in a labor market. So we can see that in the possibility of mobility and international experience is domain of higher education, which still cannot involve social disadvantaged students.
And if you are talking about the culture, what was important topic in the research was that if we think about cultures, we are still thinking in this discourse like this is us, this is them. And the important topic in the research was that we need to overcome the framework of dual thinking and deepening this trans-binary perspective, because we would like to focus more on the similarities, not for what's different within the cultures.
And also the picture from, actually it's my picture from Thailand. You can see how technologies are changing our culture. It's really part of our everyday life. But through the pandemic, we had a really problem in the Czech Republic. A lot of social disadvantaged kids stayed without this education because it was everything online. But actually the transition wasn't so easy for them. So we can see that technologies are creating new forms of social inequalities, and we need to take it in our researches.
And we are also about to finish our presentation. Like what is really very, very important is the role of university, because there is a growing public skepticism about the role of experts and elites if we are talking about inclusion and diversity. And this is what one of our experts says, that when we are talking about diversity, the university should be some place that should give opportunity to everybody, because we should meet there, socialize there, and we should enrich from the diversity to the inclusion, and we should facilitate the process of mutual understanding.
And also in the curriculum, we would like to really focus also on the knowledge that's important, but also of the values and creativity, because that's really important for us as a human being. We are creative, and that's something what technologies are not able to do, be creative, and also to focus on social skills for teachers, which is kind of a part of the practice in the social disadvantaged families.
So if we talk about the implication for education, it's very important to build global competencies and multidisciplinarity in terms of how we understand inclusion and diversity. We also need to try to think of how to deconstruct the hierarchy structure, especially in the university, and think more about the different relationship between the teacher and the students, and the creativity and problem solving. It's the diversity for those two is like a source of knowledge and inspiration. And we understand that the reflection of the experience with diversity is essential for education. And here you can see the references that we use, and thank you so much that you became part of our experts and share with us your thoughts in Mentimeters. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and thank you for your attention.